I'm Danny Wayne, the host of the Brewed Music Podcast. What I'd like you to do is share this with your friends because there's a lot of talented musicians here in the Wabash Valley. I want to introduce you first to my producer, Chris. Chris, thanks for being a part of the show with us. It's the first time you've done this with me, and I'm glad to have you.
And I'm really excited to be here, Danny. Thank you.
Chris, you being a college student and you've got a pulse on a lot of music, you are a musicologist. I see that coming in your eyes.
I like to think so.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you stepped in and going to help me out with the show today. And Brent Orndorff is a returning. Brent, good to see you again.
As always, good to see you too.
Brent, kind of get us updated, and Chris and I were talking. You've got an acoustic album called Naked that's out, but let's go back and talk about you for a minute. You've got some friends here, roots here in the Wabash Valley that have helped you out with all your projects. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I worked together with a songwriting partner named Dustin Richardson, and he went to North High School here in Terre Haute, and now he's in Nashville, and he's a producer and audio engineer down there.
You know, that's can be a challenging job, but I guess he's got his own studio now. Is that right?
Yeah, him and his roommate both, they expanded their house and built on a professional studio in their basement. Yeah.
Boy, Chris, that would be a nice thing to have in the basement, wouldn't it?
I don't know, just to have a studio just there.
To go do things, do your show, and do different things like that. So, Brent, this album is called Naked. Chris, in just a couple minutes, we'll play the first song. But, Brent, talk about that. That's a different approach for you. You've been electric in the past.
Yeah. All the albums we put out, they really feature distorted electric guitars a lot. Bluesy guitar, blues rock, and I wanted to try something different. One of my big goals in life was to get a Gibson acoustic guitar. Ever since I was like 14 and picked up a guitar, I just wanted a Gibson. Finally got one. It was in 2017, and so I sat around and played that acoustic quite a bit, and then thought, I could do some stripped down versions of the songs that are popular that we've put on other records, and do a different take on them. And so ended up calling it Naked because it's stripped down, right?
I could see that would make sense like that. But you've had a lot of success with some of your online presence with Spotify and some of the other entities.
Yeah.
People have jumped on that, haven't they?
Yeah, and it's very humbling. When I wrote the songs, I never expected that to happen. But we hit 1 million plays a couple months ago on Spotify and YouTube combined. It's kind of hard to keep track of how many plays you've got across all these different sites. I mean, if your music's on 100 sites, they're not going to all report how many plays you've got. So finally was able to count how many plays on YouTube and Spotify, and we had hit 1 million. So
pretty awesome. And Chris, being a younger, innovative guy, you probably do a lot of YouTube, Spotify searching, don't you?
Oh, I'm a big Spotify guy, and I bet for a guy like you, like how you sounded surprised when you first, at least mentioned it to us right now. Was it you're not a guy to really check numbers, at least
no,
streams?
No, not really.
Clicks.
Like people would call me even when we'd get placements, like our songs would end up in a show. And I had no idea. We just did like a blanket licensing deal with a couple of companies. Mm-hmm. And so Dusty's buddy actually called him up, and he was like, hey, I'm watching ESPN, and there's this show called 30 for 30. It's like a documentary, and it's about Bo Jackson. Right, and I don't know how old you are, but you know who he is.
Jackson is, yeah.
Right, baseball and
I'm telling
football.
you, this guy is connected. That's why I want him producing for me. Yeah.
So he called him up and he was like, "Man, I'm watching this ESPN show, 30 for 30, and your song. I'm pretty sure it's your song is in the show." So then he called me up and he was like, "Hey, our song's on ESPN in the show." I was like, awesome.
That's awesome.
And then, of course, we get a check eventually, But
but just to say your song was in a Bo Jackson documentary.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was neat.
Chris, you picked up the first track. Let me let you take that with conversation with Brent.
Just a Game. So when did you write Just a Game to begin with?
Dusty and I wrote that together in 2010 before we did Wartime Songs album down in Florida. So we wrote it in 2010, actually in a warehouse over in West Terre Haute. We had a little practice space behind the warehouse. And we ended up writing like 5 or 6 songs, and that was one of them. And that song ended up in the video game Rock Band 2. And I want to say it ended up in a show. I can't think of what it was. I mean, I wish I could. But
it's nice you can. There's so many you can't remember. That's okay. But all right, we're going to roll into it. It's Brent Orndorff, and it's Just a Game. This is from the album Naked, and you're listening to the Brewed Music Podcast.
just a fool. It took so long for me to realize, I guess I should have seen in your eyes. It was just a game. It was just a game. Oh, it's such a shame that it was just a game. Now with truth revealed, still it felt so real. What did you do to me? Somehow I could not see it. As time went past, you took my heart. I was falling fast, then it fell apart. I still don't know if you were cruel, or maybe I was just a fool. I was just a fool. It took so long for me to realize, I guess I should have seen in your eyes. It was just a game. It was just a game. Oh, it's such a shame that it was just a game.
It's the Home Brewed Music Podcast, Just a Game. That is from the album Naked. And it's Brent Orndorff in the studio with us today. Brent, glad to have you back. And Chris, boy, that's kind of a different approach when you take something and strip it down a little bit, but it gives some different passion, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Acoustic music is one of my favorite things to just sit and listen to.
And I bet there's like a different approach when performing it as well. Like
yeah,
even though you're so familiar with the original version of the song, like just stripping it down and performing it the way it is, or on the Naked album.
Yeah, there's a lot less you can kind of do. You know, sometimes like one of the tracks on the album has a ton of reverb on it, and that's kind of the extent of the effects I used, just reverb and compression. But when you're doing electric and you've got drums and bass and keys and all that stuff, you can really get a little more fancy with the effects. And so when you're doing acoustic, you really have to change your mindset and say, how can I make this simple but still interesting?
But back in the 60s, there was a lot of reverb on songs, so it might be kind of a little bit of a flashback for us.
But these days, you don't have to get in an empty swimming pool like you did back then.
Yeah. So will I be able to buy this album? What's the plan for that?
You got cash on you?
Let me check with Chris.
We have hard copies.
Yeah. But you know what? I know Chris doesn't carry any cash.
I have cash on me right now.
You actually do? Okay, good deal.
Would you prefer me to stream it?
Yeah, it'll be easier.
Contribute to the million streams.
I don't have to go out in the cold and get my trunk. So, everywhere streaming is available. iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, of course, YouTube. Really, just Google the Blue News. And it should pull it up.
Okay. Brent Orndorff is our guest. Chris, I think you found another track you kind of like, will you?
Yeah, and Danny, you already mentioned like the 60s and how they really use reverb a lot in just these different styles and these different genres of music. And Brent, you've already gone into how you use reverb and compression as far as you'll go.
With the acoustic project.
With acoustic. But on Hypnotize, we even got to see a little bit more of that in the song. Is like I'm curious into your influences on songs like this, because I hear certain artists.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'm curious to see if I guess some correct ones.
Yeah, that song to me, like, it ticks a couple boxes. Big fan of the Black Keys.
All right.
And so the vocal style on that chorus, there's kind of a distorted, cool thing that does a call and response, is what you call it in music. And so that's definitely influenced by them. And then it kind of has like a Van Morrison feel. I don't know if you've listened to much Van Morrison.
Yeah,
but
I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, it kind of has that vibe to it a little. So somewhere between Van Morrison and Black Keys is. And I don't plan it that way. I just kind of play the chords like, oh, I like that chord with that chord.
It just turns out that way.
Yeah. You start hearing influences after you've started.
Yeah, you just put a bunch of things into a pot, and if it tastes like something that you've already had before,
Yeah, right,
it just
exactly.
happens to be that way.
Yeah.
100%.
Exactly. And this one really, I tried to combine the timbre of two different acoustics. I have the Gibson acoustic, a Southern Jumbo, which is really warm and kind of singer-songwriter sounding. And then I used Gretsch Dobro, which normally you play slide on, but it's really chimey sounding. And so those two guitars, to me, when I recorded them together, was like, wow, they just really sound great together.
That is excellent. Brent Orndorff is our guest, and the album is Naked. And Chris, we're going to do Hypnotize, is that right?
Yes, Hypnotize.
All right. Thank you. Today is Home Brewed Music Podcast. Please share this with your friends so they can know about the local artists here. It's the Home Brewed Music Podcast with Hypnotize.
My friends all tried to tell me that you were up to no good. I just didn't want to believe it. Didn't listen when I should. There was something about you that stopped me in my tracks. But all of the love that you give, you always take it back. No one gets too close to you. Still I believed my love could break through the walls that you build up around
It's the Home Brewed Music Podcast. I'm Danny Wayne. Chris, my engineer. Brent Orndorff is sitting across from us. It's Naked. That's the name of the album, and Hypnotize. And boy, you're right, Chris. Was that close to your feel with the Van Morrison and maybe Black Keys?
The Black Keys, I was in the same vein.
Okay.
We're on the same wavelength, definitely.
Yeah, excellent.
But Brent, you're no stranger to the Wabash Valley.
No, grew up here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do we have any plans for future shows or maybe future projects to go along with these shows?
Yeah.
Although the Naked project just came out.
Right. Yeah, December 1st.
We gotta start looking towards the future.
Yep. Always working toward the next thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Always working on the next thing. So, are we working on that next thing?
Yeah. And actually, while I was working on this album project, a buddy of mine formed a band here in Terre Haute called Black Moon Voodoo. And they haven't started playing out yet. I think they have a gig coming up just outside town. But we were talking about possibly doing like a free show at Fairbanks in the spring sometime. I would imagine like April or May. Yeah. Or maybe April before the college students leave.
Black Moon
Voodoo.
Black Moon
Voodoo. Yeah.
Okay.
And you guys might have them in. I'll mention it to them.
Okay. Well, it's a Home Brewed Music Podcast, so you want to check out the album Naked. 11 tracks, I believe, is what we saw on there?
No, 7.
7 tracks. Okay, I'm sorry. And it's available through a variety of resources, Spotify or the streaming platforms, Chris?
Yeah, you mentioned Apple Music.
Yep.
Check them out on YouTube.
Yep.
Or
if you want to download it, really go to our website and then link to CD Baby.
And what's the website?
There's no middleman. BlueNewsBand.com.
BlueNewsBand.com. You can check it out. Hey, Brent, thanks again for stopping by. We always love to promote what bands and what the local music is, and we appreciate you coming by and keep us updated with what you do with the other projects, would you?
Yeah, awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thanks to Dustin. He's not here with us.
I wish he could make it sometime. Yeah. We'll get him here sometime.
He's a North graduate, so we'll always invite him back, all right?
All right.
Yeah. Chris, great job helping me pick the tracks. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Right. It's the Home Brewed Music Podcast. Share it with your friends. I'm Danny Wayne with the Home Brewed Music Podcast.
The River's Home Brewed Music Podcast. It's closing time here, but you can catch great classic rock anytime on air at 98.5 The River.